The Imperium of Man controls 1,000,000 worlds, commands untold trillions of soldiers, and yet, despite being the dominant faction in the galaxy, it might already be doomed to extinction. There are a few reasons, but it starts with a massive problem. The Imperium spans most of the Milky Way galaxy, making it the largest faction in the current era. But the size of its empire is also a major weakness. In real life, empires live and die by logistics, transportation, and communication. The Imperium lacks in all three of these. Space is big. When your territory spans tens of thousands of light years and your best logistics system are planet-wide libraries in Windows 97, it's not going to be efficient. Okay, to give the Imperium credit, their computers called cogitators are more advanced than our real-life ones, but they are lacking. They're definitely not good enough to organize a galaxy's worth of data. It's why they sometimes lose information on entire Imperial worlds and sectors. This is especially true when these data storage planets are attacked and lost. Alright, so what about communication? Well, it's not instantaneous. The best the Imperium has is the use of astropaths. Psychers trained to send telepathic messages through the warp. This isn't exactly safe, you are sending messages through literal hell.
The demons, they're after me. Hey, they watch me, they're in my head.
It could be worse though, you could be using Comcast. Even if it gets through, it's not a clear message. Think of it as like a jumble of symbols or a premonition in a dream. It can take weeks for the other astropath to fully decipher. If you sent a message out requesting help from an orc invasion, you just have to hope that the other side got your message, deemed your world useful enough to save, and that there were allies close enough that could actually help. Warp travel isn't great either. If a void ship's shields fail or a weak navigator can't handle the warp, it can either be instant death or their ship is overrun by demons. You better hope for instant death. The vital reinforcements needed to save a planet sometimes never arrive. If they manage to arrive at all, many times they're already too late. The world had been overrun months or even years beforehand. Additionally, ever since the fall of Cadia split the Imperium in half, one side can't see the Astronomicon anymore, which acts as a psychic lighthouse to make warp travel easier. For half the Imperium, warp travel has become even more deadly. And lastly, you might think of the Imperium's region of space like a large, solid territory, but really, it's closer to a fractured spider web. Their forces are not dispersed evenly, and pockets of Xenos and Chaos factions cut off supply lines that disconnect entire sections of Imperial space. The Imperium is barely holding itself together, and we haven't even touched the major threats yet.
We know nothing about their language, their history, or what they look like, but we can assume this. They stand for everything we don't stand for.
Despite these problems, the Imperium is still the top dog of the galaxy, just due to its sheer size. We're talking trillions upon trillions of humans at a minimum. If humanity only had to deal with one faction at a time, they could actually start winning. But that's not reality. Every time the Imperium pushes one threat back, another pops up somewhere else. Orc invasions, Drukhari raids, one of Abaddon's 50 crusades. It never stops. The Imperium is exhausted. The Imperium is like a massive beast being hunted, constantly wounded but never allowed to recover. And the worst part about this? Many of the Imperium's enemies aren't even at full strength yet. Chaos gets stronger every day. Necrons haven't fully woken up yet. The Leagues of Votann are still missing half of their model range. All of them still have room to grow. Meanwhile, the Imperium of Man is already stretched to its limit, struggling to keep external enemies at bay. But that leaves the Imperium open for far more insidious threats to fester.
It's almost like we have an imposter among us. You sussy baka.
The Imperium of Man's greatest threats aren't external, it's the internal ones that accelerate its doom, slipping between cracks in the Imperium's defenses to weaken them from the inside. Genestealer cults infiltrate entire planets in the bowels of hive cities, blending into society, planning for generations. By the time anyone realizes it, they have brethren in the Imperial Guard that shut off the planet's defenses and signal Tyranid hive fleets to arrive, handing them the world on a silver platter. Chaos cults exist in nearly every hive city, spreading the influence of the ruinous powers and giving them further strength against humanity. Rebellions, gang wars, political instability, all draining resources from within. Then there are the Tau, who trick Imperial worlds into joining the Tau Empire by giving them a higher standard of living, free dental care, and a 401k. Okay, fine, I'll admit I'm spreading Tau propaganda, but don't pretend like you would choose living in the Imperium over the Tau Empire. Come on now. Anyway, the Inquisition tries to deal with these internal threats, but you have to remember the true scale of the Imperium. Each of these hive cities can have hundreds of billions of people, with multiple hive cities for each planet. It's too large to police effectively, and in some cases, the best and only solution is exterminatus, to fully destroy a planet, a last resort to stop the spread of infection. Exterminatus is like the Imperium of Man cutting off a vital limb to save the body, but this is a heavy toll on an already exhausted and beaten down Imperium. With each exterminatus, the Imperium is weaker for the next catastrophe awaiting them. Also, if you've enjoyed this video so far, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks.
We have technology.
The height of human technology has long since passed from both the Dark Age of technology and even the Horus Heresy. The Imperium still has relics from those ages and uses them, but with each war fought or planet lost, those technologies are becoming ever more rare, the knowledge to rebuild them long forgotten. Hell, some Imperial worlds are literally in the medieval age. That isn't to say that humanity doesn't create new technology. It does. An example is the Primaris Space Marines, but they only exist because of Archmagos Belisarius' call and his refusal to back down on his beliefs. The Imperium, and especially the Adeptus Mechanicus, have an aversion to creating new technology out of fear of repeating the mistake of humanity's past. The fear of recreating artificial intelligence that nearly brought the extinction of humanity once before. Regardless of how the Mechanicus feels about Call, he literally helped resurrect Rabute Guilliman, giving the Imperium of Man a second chance at survival. So what if he already, maybe, possibly recreated artificial intelligence? I think he deserves a pass, the little rascal. What's crazy to me is that even the most basic things we know of when we think of the Imperium weren't invented by them. While humanity doesn't create many new technologies, they're perfectly fine using things from humanity's far past. It doesn't conflict with the beliefs of the Adeptus Mechanicus. For example, the standard lasgun, the most versatile and overutilized weapon of humanity, only exists because they found an STC blueprint to recreate it from the Dark Age of technology. The Warhammer community loves to make fun of the lasgun, but can you imagine how screwed the Imperium would be if they didn't have them? The lasgun is basically staving off humanity's extinction. I'm tired of the lasgun slander. It goes to show though how serious the technological decay is and how much they have fallen from their peak. A fraction of humanity's old technology that they managed to find basically decides if humanity continues to survive. The Imperium isn't advancing, it's decaying, in more ways than one. All governments suffer a reoccurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible. A different sci-fi universe, sure, but an adept description of the Imperium. Doom was a major inspiration for 40k after all. Corruption has long been growing within the Imperium. It's something that really any government or society struggles to deal with. In a universe as cruel as 40k, power is all the more sought after. For some, it's the only chance at a better life, or just for outright survival. Many Hive City nobles think of themselves as superior, both literally and figuratively above the lesser humans on the lower levels of the Hive Cities, a perfect representation of a sci-fi caste system. These nobles will get it in their heads that they can actually take on the Imperium. This corruption can be bad enough where entire planets will rebel against the Imperium. The nobility will see the wider Imperium as an evil regime that forces them into subjugation. But another more selfish reason is because the corrupt nobles desire ever more power. Claiming their own independence solidifies their rule. A great example of this happening is the Death Core of Krieg's home planet. Literally, this exact same scenario played out. Corruption can spring up from anywhere, even at the very top of the Imperium's government. A time in the Imperium's history called the Age of Apostasy can be summarized as a multi-century grudge match between the Administratum and the Ecclesiarchy. Both sides were grasping for majority rule over the Imperium, using covert agents against each other and making political decisions that benefited their colleagues at the detriment of the wider Imperium. This infighting got so bad that one of the worst, most corrupt people to ever exist in the Imperium, Goj Van Dyer, saw the opportunity to seize all of it. and became the commander of both the Administratum and Ecclesiarchy, essentially giving absolute power to a deranged psychopath for nearly a full century before being executed. He's like the Mad King from Game of Thrones, if any of you watched that show before it turned into shit. I'm still pissed over that ending. Goj Vandire had brought the Imperium low, claiming to be an avatar of the Emperor's will while enacting laws that directly weakened the Imperium. Corruption had reached the very peak of human authority, but people like him don't rise to power on their own. It takes many people up the ladder to fail to do the right thing that causes such corruption to take root. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Unfortunately though, it's more complicated than that. The system of corruption is going exactly by design. There's a great short story between an inquisitor and a man that tried to change the corrupt system on Holy Terra. And when the man asks the inquisitor why he upholds such a rotten system, he says the following: "Let me tell you about this place. It was built a long time ago, and its structure is rotting. The iron skeleton is corroding into nothing little by little. Every minute, every hour. If nothing is done, one day it will collapse. But what can be done? We would have to take apart every stone to get to the root, in which case we destroy what we seek to save. So we work around the edges. Small things, subtle things. We let the rot linger, because removing it would take down everything else." The corruption is intertwined with the Imperium of Man. As depressing as it is, it's become a vital part of its existence. When the entire house has rotted away, the only way to fix it is to tear it down and rebuild again. Even an Inquisitor admits that eventually, the Imperium of Man is doomed to collapse.
You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
For anyone else remotely familiar with Warhammer 40k, you know it's not a place any Warhammer fan would ever want to live in. The Imperium of Man is an extremely cruel, totalitarian society that controls all aspects of the lives of its citizens. Expect to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and get a single holiday on Emperor's Day. Now, I do concede that some of this perceived cruelty is necessary. They need the resources to continuously be pumped out 24/7 to keep up with war demand, but the work conditions and standard of living for the average citizen are beyond inhuman. Living in a small, confined hat block the size of a closet, working in an industrial factory that is about 50 levels below the nearest visible sunlight, eating food made from the recycled bodies of dead humans. You can imagine that living your entire life under such conditions can breed resentment for the Imperium. They lead bleak, short, and unfulfilling lives with no hope of a better future. Such work conditions don't breed loyalty. You either submit and resign yourself to that life, or the opposite. You would do anything to change it, to change your fate. This is why so many turn to the worship of chaos for answers, or join hive gangs to profit off of others, or it becomes the reason for a full planet-wide rebellion, each of these further weakening an already doomed Imperium. Even those that stick to their jobs will make fatal errors due to the miserable working conditions. Here's an example. At the start of the book 15 Hours, we get a glimpse into the life of a records clerk, whose entire job is basically listening to hundreds of thousands of coordinate numbers every day and inputting it into a computer. He suddenly realizes that one of the sets of coordinates he typed in before might have been incorrect, that he might have made a mistake, but instead of trying to fix it, he thinks to himself, after all, it hardly really mattered whether or not he made a mistake. He had long ago realized his labors, like his life, were of no importance, and in the end, they were only numbers. They never even bothered to tell him what all those coordinates meant. Well, that single mistake ends up sending a newly trained Imperial Guard unit that was meant to go to an easy starter planet, but were instead sent to a war-torn hellhole that probably killed nearly all 500 of them. A tragedy that unfortunately happens hundreds of times over every day in the Imperium. Their society's heavy reliance on fear and faith keeps people in line, but the day-to-day toils of a system that clearly doesn't care about you, that strips you of your hope, your reason to be alive, a perfect breeding ground is created for the ruinous powers to snake their way into human society. The Imperium of Man not only fails itself, but it fails the very people that it was meant to protect. If somehow all of these prior problems were fixed, even then, there is one central issue the Imperium of Man can never escape that signals their downfall: their reliance on the Emperor of Mankind. Earlier, I mentioned the Astronomicon, that psychic lighthouse thing. Well, that's powered by the Emperor of Mankind, who's interred on the Golden Throne. If the Astronomicon were to ever go out, you can say goodbye to faster than light travel for humanity. Oh yeah, and all the demons that the Emperor was holding back would destroy Holy Terra. The Emperor acts as a central, rotting pillar to the Imperium of Man, but that pillar is close to collapse. Slowly but surely, the Golden Throne that keeps the Emperor alive is failing. No one in the Imperium fully understands how the Golden Throne works. Most suggestions on how to fix the Golden Throne are quickly shut down. That might sound idiotic, but you have to keep in mind, it is a massive risk to try fully repairing the Golden Throne. The entire fate of humanity rests on that decision. If you saw some of the things the Adeptus Mechanicus did on a daily basis, you would be hesitant as well. However, they do allow the Mechanicus to at least make minor repairs to maintain the Golden Throne, but it only staves off the inevitable. There will be a day soon that those requests will have to be taken seriously. There is a small chance that his death will lead to his resurrection. There are various theories on that, but we can't assume that will happen. The worst scenario must be expected, which is, if the Emperor dies, the Imperium of Man dies with him. So, is the Imperium already doomed? If the Imperium of Man continues down the path it's headed without change, then yes, its death is certain. But I would argue there are glimmers of hope for the Imperium. Faint glimmers, but sometimes it's all humans need. Gilliman, the Lion, and Call are exactly the leadership needed to turn things around, reorganizing the Imperium's efforts, gathering their strength, and reversing technological stagnation. The success of the Indomitus Crusade and creation of the Primaris Space Marines is evidence of that fact. And some of the plans to fix the Golden Throne do have a real chance at working. It's just the risk is still too high without further research and planning. They get one chance at it, they can't afford to screw it up. Despite the impossible odds, the Imperium of Man has proven one thing: humanity refuses to die. 10,000 years humanity has survived without the Emperor's guidance. 10,000 years later of decay, and the Imperium has endured, having the determination to keep moving forward, to sacrifice trillions for one more day of life. That's humanity's strength, its unbending resolve to survive. And until the very last human breathes its final breath, the Imperium of Man isn't doomed. Not yet. Thanks for watching.